Hello and welcome back to another episode of Coerced Videography. This time I got so lost in the American public school system that I ended up studying British literature. And they call this a free country. Case in point, today I will be discussing the medieval period of English literature, also known as the Matter of Britain. Now I'm not saying over 400 years of history is too much history to cover in a short-length video, but I am saying over 400 years of history is too much history for me to want to cover in any length of video. So we'll be lasering in on one story in particular, someone whose general story has been crammed into the collective consciousnesses of everybody the British got their grubby little hands on. What was that accent? Anyways, he's the boss of Britain, the slaying swordsman, the ambiguous, attributed, Arthurian Rex. King Arthur. Now, the story of King Arthur doesn't exactly originate from the medieval period, but this is my video and my teacher said I could talk about him anyways. However, I feel I should do my due diligence and tell you a brief history of the Anglo Saxon period from which Arthurian legend originates. I give myself 60 seconds. So there was this thing called the Roman Empire, and empired all the way into ancient Britain until the Alaricanist Goths started beating down on the Rome, causing them to pull out of the British Isles permanently. So now free from empire rule, the Britons, the Gales, and the Picts enjoyed such amazing traditions as speaking different dialects of Celts and continuing to act as if they were still part of the Romans. However, part of the Romans they were not, and now disconnected from infrastructure that Rome left behind, they started collapsing. Blah blah blah, fractured Christianity, blah blah blah, aggressive Pict tribes, blah blah blah, here we go. So there's this king who was almost as fictitiously, historically ambiguous as the Arthur man himself, by the name of Vortigern. Now this fellow was having trouble with those attacking Pict tribes that I just glossed over, so he phoned his quote-unquote Scandinavian friends from across the North Sea, the Anglos and Saxons and the Jews, and he went, hey, can you help me with my Pict problem? And they went, why, of course we can help you with your Pict problem, we're not gonna backstab you. And Vort went, what? And they went, what? And then they promptly backstabbed the heck out of Vortigern. This is where our boy King Arthur is said to originate. The earliest source implies that he was some awesome ruler on Team OG Britain during the Scandinavian invasion, and he was such an awesome ruler that OG Britain lost and were pushed out of the mainland, taking their story with them. Now, is that a crude oversimplification of the beginning of a massive era in British history? Probably. But as an American, crudely oversimplifying British history feels patriotic. On that note, let's skip all the Anglo-Saxon stuff because it's irrelevant and I frankly don't care. And now we're at the beginning of the medieval period. Whoa! Where the Normans get into power and culture continues to culture. So that Arthur fella comes back and gets some cred for the Battle of Badon and some anti-cred for the strife of Camlan in the Annales Cambriae. It's neither here nor there. But it's kind of all he gets for a little bit, and by a little bit I mean several hundred years, until another guy by the name of Geoffrey of Monmouth gets around to writing. I don't know if it's Geoffrey or Geoffrey. We're going to go with Geoffrey because I like saying that. He gets around to turning the story of King Arthur into the legend of King Arthur. So writes this book called The History of Kings of Britain, which I would totally read if this project wasn't due tomorrow, and the book was written in a version of English that does not run on my hardware. However, let me give you the rundown. Uther is a guy who wants to hold hands with a gal named Aegirna. One problem, she's married with this other dude named Gorlois, so Uther and Gorlois start a war, and a magical wizard named Merlin, you might have heard of him, does the logical thing and shapeshifts Uther to look like Gorlois, you know, the person he wants to hold hands with wife. Blah, 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 we're going to skip what happens next because this is a school project, and oh my god, King Arthur? Where did you come from? Oh? Your parents are Uther and Aegirna? What a coincidence, we were just talking about them. Oh no, Uther got killed by the Saxons. Quick, take the throne, Arthur. Oh wow, you found the mythic sword Excalibur forged in the magical islands of Avalon? Got a wife named Guinevere and already conquered all of the Isles and Norway and a major part of the Roman Empire? That's great. Oh, I think the Roman Empire wants their land back. While you're busy fighting them, your nephew, Sir Mordred, is going to go ahead and get Guinevere. Ooh, what's my script say? I feel like I was supposed to say something here, but I forgot what it was. Oh, right. Well, I can't keep talking about that plot. Skipping past the stuff, Geoffrey's story about King Arthur ends right after the strife of Camelot, where Arthur is wounded and shipped off to Avalon to heal. But this is merely the skeleton of what King Arthur's story means. Why did I paraphrase that? You may be wondering where the Holy Grail and the questing and the Knights of the Round Table are. In order to see where all those stories come from, we gotta pivot to another author. One with an even less pronounceable name. No spoilers. Stop looking down. Don't look down. How do you pronounce that? Chrétien de Troyes was a French guy, but like a lot of French guys, he had a massive impact on British history, if you know what I mean. Where's my Americans at? Anyways, his contributions to Arthurian legend come in the form of many lengthy stories that are isolated yet interwoven to create a cohesive narrative that forms the modern idea of King Arthur. These stories include adding more backstory for existing characters, such as that guy from earlier named Merlin. Yeah, he makes him a half-demon who was baptized in order to prevent him from becoming the Antichrist. Crazy story, you should read about it later. And, that's one example. Also, he does several different stories about the Holy Grail. You know the thing you always hear about? Yeah, there's one where, like, there's a Fisher King, and then, like, Percival has to do a bunch of trials because he didn't do something. It's a long story. One of them's just good old-fashioned questing where they go look for it. He also creates the other knights, like the one I just mentioned, Percival. There's also Galahad, Lancelot, Bors, Gawain. I would name them all, but there's about 150 more, and I don't want to be here that long. And most of them don't even have names. Also, the Sword and the Anvil. Yes, Anvil, and yeah, that Disney movie got it right. And also Courtly Love, also known as Guinevere's cheating on Arthur with Lancelot, but it's noble because of some weird trend that was happening in France at the time. I didn't really look into it because I didn't really want to. Now, each of these auditions are, as you can tell, full 10-minute videos on their own, so sadly I can't go into any detail about them. However, I do encourage you use the source linked below to get more information about both the mythos, the authors, and the era in British history.